Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from the world of real estate from Brisbane, Australia, Rauhena Chase. Rauhena, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ash, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here and to be able to talk about real estate, commercial real estate.
Thank you. Rauhena is the founder of Rauhena Chase Commercial Real Estate. She's an Australian and a New Zealander of Maori descent. So, Rauhena, before we get into talking about real estate, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Okay, well, so I was born in New Zealand. My dad's a Māori and my mum is English. And I left there when I was 19. So I came across to Australia, met my husband here. We have 4 children. They all live in Australia, hence the reason I'm still here. I love the fact that I belong to 2 different countries. I've got dual citizenship. New Zealand's gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful. It's home. I've been in Australia so long, it's home. So having 2 homes is really very spoiled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. So lived in Brisbane since 1988. We had the expo. We came up to Brisbane and have lived here since. And so a mum of grown children and 2 beautiful grandchildren and loving life.
Wonderful. 9 months ago, we also became grandparents. So you can imagine what a delight it is to have grandchildren. But, Rauhena, my next question is, and this is for the many, many viewers and listeners, tell me a little bit about Maori culture, because not too many people outside New Zealand and Australia are familiar with it. And what has that culture had an impact on you as a real estate broker or real estate leader?
Well, for me, the Maori culture is very much, it's ingrained, it's in my blood.
Yeah.
And I realize that when I go live in another country and I hear the songs or the culture, or I do see the haka, because everyone knows the All Blacks. So, when you see something happening around the world that's related to your country, you really feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Maori people were very tribal. We're from the east coast of New Zealand. My tribe is Kahanunu. Was our chief. So we were very tribal. So we would protect our areas. We would intermarry as well. But there was a lot of sort of very warlike people way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's given me that sort of DNA of being challenging and working hard and standing my ground.
Mm-hmm.
I've also got a bit of German blood in there because we had German whalers come across as well. So they infiltrated New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit of strength from them as well. And then I've got the English in me as well. So the Māori culture is very made up of an aroha type of people, loving people, who really care for families. Families is very, very forefront, much the forefront of their lives, and their children and the people who've gone before them and the people who are coming after them. So it's very important. They're really reviving the language a lot more now. And I think the language is so important to keep a culture going.
Correct. Well said. So let's talk real estate now, Rauhena. What inspired you to become a real estate broker? And how long have you been in the industry?
Well, I've been in the industry 20 years, and I look back and go, wow, okay, that happened. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, I actually fell into it. I took a job as a receptionist in a retail management company. I didn't even know that existed. And from there, I stayed with them for about 3 years. And in that time, it was a head office. We had 19 shopping centres around Brisbane. So I learned a lot about the contract side of things, the leasing side of things, the management type of things as well. So from that, I went off to an agency, which was Rain and Horn Commercial. From there, I stayed for about at least 15 years, and I learned how to manage properties. So it was really a maneuver that was not thought through. It just happened.
Correct.
And as I stayed, I loved it. It was like I found a passion. I thought, I think I found my thing.
Absolutely. And as this say, the old saying of life happens, and looks like you seem to are really enjoying whatever you have been presented. So, when you look at the real estate market in Australia, how has it changed and evolved over the years? And what kind of trends are you seeing in the future?
Yes, well, from a property management view, what's been happening, especially with the pandemic, that was a major event for everyone, of course. So there were a lot of changes because of that. But even prior to that, you would see what would be happening around the areas when there were flooding, when there were severe storms. You'd see how properties were handling that, how owners were handling that, how tenants were coping. So there was a lot of aspects that would be looked at within when there were dramatic changes happening to the economy. So really the pandemic is a huge one. And that brought out the people who were weaker, who weren't coping anyway. They really didn't make it. But the ones who were ready to maneuver, to have cash maybe to purchase properties that were then no longer being tenanted, or tenants who are expanding, therefore they were able to take over those larger industrial sites that the other tenants weren't able to cope with anymore or need. So we found different aspects in the industrial scene. Those were the sort of the points we found. But we also found that a lot of offices were now not working and were not being used in the CBD. So a lot of companies were downsizing, were therefore going out into the suburbs and looking for, say, warehouse type office properties that they could, downsize to. They could be then local with the people, with their staff. That really worked well for them. But in saying that has had detrimental results on the CBD, and that's not only in Australia. That's also worldwide. I belong to an international commercial real estate women's group based in the States, and they see the same trends everywhere, and everyone is trying to work out the best way to solve that problem. And it's coming out of it, but it's finding the ways of coming out of that, which is most important.
Very interesting. And when you get involved in a transaction, how do you help clients navigate the buying or selling of property?
Okay.
And what is the process that you follow?
Yeah, well, from a property management view, selling a property, I do my best to make sure that your rental rates are really good. The property is looking good on paper. The outgoings are reduced to the best that we can. We make sure we get the best quotes for our owners and making sure everything sits really well for that. And the property is looking great to sell on. For anybody buying the properties, they need to really know the area and the location that they are looking at purchasing in. I do know a story of a lady who purchased something that she was not living near, so out of the other end of the state. She purchased it thinking it was fine. She wasn't able to visit it regularly. She ended up with a really bad tenant and the property going down, and she didn't realize that. So for her to purchase something that you're closer to is my advice for anybody, especially if it's something that they're new at. They're new investors. Get advice from so many different groups out there, but also be close to the property and be very business savvy. You really have to be business savvy in this in the property industry. So that's what I would my advice would be to people who are buying and selling, and that's how I would help them. I would give advice from my business side of what I'm doing in my own business. I would be giving them advice to that degree, and I would be putting out content so that they can sort of have a basic understanding of where they're coming from, what they need to look for when they're going to purchase or when they're going to sell, what the tenant's like, what the area's like, a lot of basics like that.
Well said. Every time I try to buy or sell a property, I always end up feeling if I'm selling, I haven't got the right price, and if I'm buying, I haven't got the right price. So my question to you, Rauhena, is what are some of the basic mistakes a lot of buyers and sellers make?
Oh, well, some of the buyers make the mistake of it looks really pretty and they haven't done their due diligence, and the background is not really that great. I think buyers, especially if you're going into a complex industrial site, for instance, talk to the tenants, drive around the neighborhood, do your homework before you even go any further. Correct. And make sure your figures are legit. I mean, do they really stack up, or have they been inflated to make it look pretty? So that's really important. Really have a good look through the property. Look at everything that's going to come and bite you, which could be, the plumbing, could be the roof, which is a huge one. It could be lots of little maintenance things that were small but end up being big. So those are other things I would look at buyers looking at, making sure your tenants are really good too. What's their longevity going to be? Is the rental where you want it to be, or do you need to move those tenants on and find somebody better? So those are really good when you're looking at buying. And when you're selling, again, it's like, just make sure what you've got, be very transparent, because if it falls apart, you're back to square one, basically. So you don't want it to do that. Yeah.
Correct. Well said. My next question is, that what would your advice be to first-time buyers? Once you've bought and sold a couple of properties, at least you've got some experience, and with skills like yours to support a buyer or a seller, it makes it easier. But what would your advice be to a first-time buyer?
Don't walk in there and be passionate about it. I mean, it's not your home. It'll be someone else's home though, because they'll be living it. Pretty much 24/7 they're working there. But don't be passionate about it. Just look at it very objectively, and therefore you're going in with a level head. If you're going, I just love this. It's just, I love the way they've done the bathrooms, or I love the paint on the wall in the office, or whatever, don't look at it like that, because the tenant's going to come in and just do whatever they're going to do anyway. So be very objective when you're looking at what you're purchasing. But again, know your neighborhood, know the location, check is it flood zone, and if it is, are you prepared for that? And are your tenants prepared for that?
Well said. Well said. The next question, Rauhena, is about technology. Yes. I've been seeing people, they're showing me a property. Now, everything is available on your mobile phone. They can give you a 3-dimensional tour of the property that you're looking at. I want to get your perspective on what role is technology and social media playing in the real estate industry, and how are you using it to support your clients?
Oh yeah, it plays a huge role, because now you can get to people anywhere, anytime. And I think that's the joy of technology. There are a lot of different companies putting the latest AI out there, so you've got to be up with it. And how I'm helping the clients, how I'm reaching out to my clients is using by social media. So that's definitely, I'm not on TikTok, but I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So you don't know where, the clients are going to be, and it's all through word of mouth. But I'm definitely putting out lots of content, and video is definitely it. Your 1 minute short little snippet of something is going to catch more people than anything that's longer. You really want to give them a taste of what you've got. And so for me, for my business, that's really helped, because my clients are coming to me like, oh, she's answered a question. Now I need to know, can you give me more? And when I can give them more, which they see that I can, then it's like, oh, they feel so much better. I think that's really important about people who are buying, selling, or managing their own properties, which is the angle I'm coming from. It's just feel confident in what you're doing. Just once you feel confident, it's just so much easier to make the transition between a purchase, a sale, or managing. And managing is an ongoing thing for so many people who decide to manage their own properties.
Well said. And from your own perspective, how do you stay up to date with all the latest developments in your sector and in the technology?
Yeah, well, I like to attend events that are being held. Now, I belong to the Real Estate Institute of Queensland, and therefore I'm very up with what's happening in the real estate industry, but particularly commercial. I used to be the chair of the commercial chapter for the Real Estate Institute of Queensland. So therefore, that's really a great way of me keeping up with what's going on out there in the market, because I'm no longer sitting in an office with my colleagues chit-chatting about, property. Correct. So I need to be there in another way. So I do that. As I said, I belong to the Commercial Real Estate Crew, which is Commercial Real Estate Women Network, and that's based in America. So seeing what they're doing and getting an idea of what's happening globally, and again, listening to the rhetoric is really important for me, because then I get a bigger picture, because I'm not only servicing people in Brisbane, I'm national. I mean, you've got a property, you've got a tenant, you've got an owner, you put them together, that's not hard to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And we spoke a little bit about COVID a few minutes ago, but tell me about how did the 3 years that we were all locked in, how did that impact the property market in Australia?
Well, I tell you what, it as I said before, it's sort of the men out from the boys. If you weren't coping, your business isn't going to cope, and you're going to end up leaving.
Mm.
We had a lot of people coming to us with wanting owner assistance. The government was also offering assistance in some form, so that helped. But vetting those tenants who are coming to say, hey, I'm really, and they're crying poor, really not doing well, vetting them, you could tell the ones who were genuine because they had nothing to show you, financially when you asked. And then the other ones, we also had some big major ones coming through, and I don't know why they thought they needed help, but they were trying it anyway. Again, you had to justify where they were coming from with their request. They're probably looking at the bigger global picture and thought, well, if we work it here and we snip it there, it's going to help another country. I'm not too sure. So we had different experiences of different takes on how tenants were being affected by COVID. And therefore that reflected through to the owners. Again, if they had one property and they were using that, and that was from their super fund, and they were using it to support themselves in retirement, well, you had to really, as a manager, make sure the figures worked for them, or they would have to sell. So your goal was to hopefully help them not to have to get to that point. But in saying that, some tenants were booming. We had people bringing so much stock in from overseas and being able to, they needed bigger, warehouses. So you look at that, and they really did fantastic.
Correct.
The smaller ones really didn't do well, and that would have been across the world for sure.
And since you focus more on commercial real estate, one of the things that I have been seeing it happening in India is that 5 years ago, malls were very, very big and very lucrative. But with the advent of e-commerce and the pandemic, a lot of the malls are lying empty. Is that a trend you see in Australia as well?
Oh, definitely. The smaller neighbourhood centres, which is your smaller ones in your neighbourhoods, they were suffering, and they have to really get stronger tenants in, and it took a while to make that transition. But the larger ones, they just had to diversify, and they had to think of all the other different ways to get people into the shopping centres. Westfield do a great job, and so many others do, but it's changing the mindset of, I'm not just going to go to the shop and get my food, or go to the shop and buy the dress. I'm going to take my family. We're now going to be entertained. We're going to be, it's like an event. So they're really trying to create that culture around their large spaces, because you see the ones that aren't coping well, they've got lots of full lease signs, and the place looks really empty and quite dead, and you don't never want a shopping centre looking like that. So it's really being able to think outside the box and go, an opportunity, let's move with this change. And I tell you what, amazing things can come from that. So, and that's what I think the good thing about COVID was. All of a sudden it switched people's thinking, like working from home more. How is that going to work? How can we now live in a different environment?
Correct.
And I think those ones who thought outside the box made it happen really well.
Correct. Well said. So I have time for 2 more questions. Yes. My next question is that, since you've been in this industry for so many years, how do you build and maintain strong relationships with your clients? Because you're in a business where your credibility, your relationships are very important. And if one client is happy, they'll say, why don't you call Rauhena? I had a great experience with her and her firm. What do you do to ensure that you maintain strong bonds and strong relationships?
Well, but communication is the key. It's being genuine in the conversations and being very relatable. Like saying, I know what you're saying, I know where you're coming from, and yeah, look, I've had that experience. So I think when they feel like they're talking with someone who gets them and gets their situation, all of a sudden the barriers go down, and they're like, oh, so what should we do? I was like, well, let me tell you. You know what I mean? So it's about finding a rapport with the people. So when my clients do come to me, that's sort of how it's gone. I find that the clients who think they know everything, will talk to you for a little bit, but they don't stay around. So those aren't the ones that I want to help. I want to help the ones who genuinely want that help. Mum and dads, fantastic. All the smaller ones. If I can fill that niche, then that's where I'm meant to be.
Well said. And my last question to you, Rauhena, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey, from New Zealand to Australia, starting your own business, having worked for other companies, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of our young viewers and listeners to take away?
Wow. I mean, I love that question. It's like, okay, be passionate. Just be passionate about what you want to do. Really, if you've got that passion, and if you can see, that's what I got this passion for property. Who would have thought? You've got to have a passion for it, because the people will feel that, and that will give you the longevity through whatever industry you want to work in, whatever business you want to do, entrepreneurial, whether with anyone else, but however you want to do that. Be passionate. Another thing I thought about is communicate really well with people, and always be transparent. If you don't know, say, I don't know, but I'll find out. Always say yes, then work it out from go around the back and make sure, can I help you? Yes, I can help you. I'm going to work out a way I can help you. And the last one is to really remember that you're here to serve people. So the knowledge you have, give it out, because it will come back to you. But we're all given knowledge. We're all going down a path for a reason. People will come across our path all the time. How can we serve them with the knowledge that we have in the industry that we're passionate about? That's what I'd love people to take away from this.
Well said. And on that note, and your amazing lessons, be passionate, communicate well, be transparent, and serve people and give out your knowledge. Thank you, Rauhena, for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about the Māori culture. Thank you for speaking to me about real estate and how you are looking at different aspects of real estate in Brisbane and Australia. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ash. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.